Well, welcome everybody. I'm Jim from authormarketingclub.com, and we're doing another AMC Masterclass for you all today. We have David Wogan on the line. How are you, David?
Great. Great to be here, Jim. Thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. David is the president of authorimprints.com and the publisher of the book reviewer Yellow Pages. If you haven't heard of this, it's a pretty amazing resource about getting book reviews and where to get them, how to get them, all that stuff. And David and I started talking recently, and he proved himself as a big-time authority in the subject of getting reviews for your books. And as you know, at Author Marketing Club, we believe that getting book reviews is one of the most critical things you can do when you want to have success selling your book. And getting those reviews is, of course, difficult. That's why we have the reviewer grabber tool at Author Marketing Club, and we have happy book reviews, and we try to help you get those reviews because, you know, you can't launch your book, in my opinion, until you have a really solid base of reviews because of the social proof. But I don't want to steal any of David's thunder today. He's going to be presenting a masterclass called Jumpstart Your Book Reviews. So I'm just going to put it on mute, let you take over, David, and thank you so much for being here. Here you go. Go ahead.
Great. Well, thanks, Jim. It's exciting to be here as well. I think, as you said, just to echo that, I do believe that book reviews are the most important thing for new books, and especially for first book authors or authors that are publishing less frequently. The reviews are really social proof that the book is worthy of a reader buying or borrowing it to read. So what I'd like to do is we'll talk briefly about the agenda for this session. And it's going to begin with what I consider to be the key factors for success, and followed by several of the myths. These are things that I often hear that are just either not necessarily true or need some clarification. Then we'll go into the 4 sources of reviews, because it really depends on the author and the book and what they're trying to accomplish, how it's being distributed. And there's different strategies and options for sourcing those reviews. And then one of the things you often hear about are contacting bloggers. And I have a quick start guide I'd like to run through quickly with you all. And finally, covering some frequently asked questions, followed by a recap that really kind of brings everything together as a unit. So beginning with the key factors for success, the most important thing that we hear is that quality is most important, especially with self-published authors. There's a tendency, or at least the opportunity, to produce a book very kind of what you might call slapdash fashion, where it's not edited, or it's a second-rate cover, or the production values of the interior design or the ebook programming is lacking. And we're finding some bloggers and others are saying we don't want to review self-published books because of those issues. And so I always like to stress, number one, is that quality is absolutely critical, especially for the quality reviewers, whether that's going to be someone like a Kirkus all the way to an average blogger looking at things. But some of these bloggers are actually not reviewing self-published books because of the quality. So I really want to stress that very strongly. Secondly is you always need to have a budget, and whether that's money, but frankly, time is really what's going to be required, again, for that self-published author and even a traditionally published author that wants to get more reviews for their book. You've got to put in the time, and I believe that you really need to have some kind of a budget, even if it's just buying some books for people to read. You want to plan ahead. There's a lot of bloggers who are books that they're ready to review, or all reviewers, and they're quite busy with books to review. And we always want reviews when our book is launched, which means that you can't just call somebody or contact somebody a week or so before the book is out and expect them to drop everything and review the book. So planning ahead is another very critical thing. And how far? Well, you probably want to be at least 30 days and probably even 90 days. And some of the reviewers, the more professional reviewers, are going to ask for 120 days. You also want to start with your fans before you go out to the public. And I have a slide on this. I'm going to talk about it in a little more detail. And then aligning your efforts with your market, which I know sounds a little bit nebulous, and I have a slide on this as well. So let's get quickly here to what I would call prospecting in safer territories first. And as you see, the smallest circle here on the right is the previous fans or your best friends forever. These are the people who know you, they know your writing, and they're probably most likely to write a review. They're going to be a little more forgiving and generous. Perhaps they know your background, you know how much you know about your particular subject, regardless of the book. And they're going to be the ones that you're going to want to turn to first for reviews. The second group out from that would be what I'd call chosen reviewers. These are people that are handpicked. They could be a part of a street team. And those are going to be people, again, who are kind of know, like, and trust you. And they're going to be great people for you to contact next. The third group out from that is your mailing list. And whether that's a mailing list of 5 or 10 people or a mailing list of 5 or 10,000 people, this is really, again, a little broader group, obviously, than what the chosen reviewers are, but they're not the general readers that are visiting your page on Amazon and buying the book and looking at the reviews that are there. So if you kind of think about going out in this order, it's really going to help you get the right reviews at the right timing for your book and get it off on a good start. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the aligning your efforts with the audience for your book or your status as an author. And what I mean by this is that some books are not necessarily destined for every library in America or the local Barnes and Noble store. And so there's going to be reviewers who will specialize in reaching the people who make buying decisions for those kinds of purchases. And if you're writing in a, say, more a deeper genre like paranormal or vampires, vampire romance, then having a review from Kirkus may not necessarily be the right investment for you. It's great if you can afford that. They've got a great name. However, reader reviews are probably a little more important at this stage than the reviews of a professional review service like a Kirkus or Clarion, which is part of Forward Reviews. So that audience for your book, whether it's the individuals that like that paranormal romances, that keep staying with that example, or those librarians, those are the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about when you're putting together your review strategy. And again, we'll come back to this when we talk about those 4 options. And then obviously your budget, you can do this for free if you have a network of people, but you always need to have some kind of a budget available, even if it is just to buy books for people, because you should never expect them to buy the books themselves. They're doing you the favor. So moving on to the myths, the first one that I hear very often is that paying for reviews is illegal or unethical. And I like to come back to what that word paying means, because as I said before, buying a book for someone is technically you're buying that for them, but that's not necessarily an illegal or unethical thing. You can also pay people for a faster turnaround. This is a very common purchase and requirement by some bloggers who will say, look, I'll review the book, but I've got 10 ahead of you. If you want me to prioritize it, I will. You're not paying for the review, you're paying for the faster turnaround. This is also true of the professional review services. You can also pay for an access to network reviewers. So good examples of this would be the would be Goodreads, would be Happy Book Reviews, it would be NetGalley. Those are all where there's a network of reviewers and you're really paying someone to help you make your book available to those people. Another one is financial support. A lot of the larger publishers are buying advertising in the trade magazines. And so while they may not be paying for the review directly, they are indirectly subsidizing the reviewer, which I would consider to be paying for reviews in a broader sense. And then finally, you're actually paying for the review. There's nothing wrong with this at all. What is a problem is when it's not disclosed as the arrangement or you're dictating terms. In other words, I'll give you a book if you promise to write a review, or I'll give you this book, but I want a 5-star review. Those are both no-nos, and when Amazon or anyone else finds out about that, that's bad news. You can have those reviews taken down, or you can get into a public shaming situation like some authors experienced a few years ago. Myth number two is that Amazon doesn't allow paid reviews. And as I just mentioned, they do allow paid reviews. In fact, they have a whole system set up for this. And there's two types of Amazon reviews, and one are editorial, and the second one are reader reviews. So all of us that buy books, we're familiar with reader reviews. These are posted by readers, and this is starred. And this is what really a lot of us are after in that regard. But also editorial reviews are placed within your book's profile page. And as Amazon says, this is their word, reputable sources, and they must be credited. And they're posted by the author or the publisher or publicist via Author Central. These are not starred reviews. They appear on that same page, however. And just for clarity, the Amazon community guidelines, I just wanted to put this paragraph here, that you can continue to, book authors and publishers may continue to provide free or discounted copies of their books to readers as long as they don't require review and exchange or attempt to review, influence the review. And this is, like I said in that earlier slide, where you're not making a requirement here for people to do things. And that's why with something like a Goodreads giveaway, you send the book out and it's up to the person that receives it whether or not they write the review. Myth three is that people feel that their friends will write the reviews. Now, in my experience and the experience that I've read about is that that's usually less than about a quarter of the people who say they're going to do that and actually do that. Now, some of the people that you may go to, if you have a smaller network, they could get disqualified, or worse. They may very innocently, it could be a family member, try to write a review, and Amazon has ways to at least discover a 1 or 2 degree connection to us and send a note back. And this has happened to me actually with my wife. And you're told, no, you can't write it for a family member or someone where you have a close relationship with. I had a client that actually wrote a review on my first book, and it was taken down. It was very innocent. She bought it. I didn't even know that she bought it and wrote the review, but it was taken down, and I have no idea how that connection was made. The other thing is, I think a lot of people don't think about is that if you have a friend that, or some other individual that writes a review for your book, and yours is the only book that they've ever reviewed, other shoppers and reviewers can see that because they can click on the name of the person who has reviewed the book and see that the only thing that they've ever reviewed ever on Amazon is this person's book. And obviously that's a friend of the author in that particular case, and it really discounts the review. So while I think that we definitely want to reach out to friends and others to write reviews, I think you need to be careful about how you do that. And so just getting into that a little more deeply, review source number one is really your mailing list or your network. Now, I consider this to be probably your most valuable and best opportunity for reviews. And in the case of people who have maybe written their first book, it's obviously going to be a smaller network and people that you know maybe a little more closely, or could be other business associates. And for others, it could be quite a large network. You don't have to get too caught up in the technology on this. The most important thing is that you do have a mailing list. So you could just use regular email and a spreadsheet, or just type people's names in and say, please review my book. A better kind of a step up from that, obviously, is to use a mailing list manager. And the ones that we've heard a lot about over the years, MailChimp or Aweber, ConvertKit is a new one on the block, Constant Contact, all of these are terrific. They all keep track of your emails. You do want to start these sooner rather than later, even if it's just a few people, because it does grow and you want to keep adding to it. Tip 3 is just treat this as a list of people who are interested in your writing, and to the extent that people unsubscribe, just don't take it personally. You always want to be talking to people who are interested in your book. You don't want to be jamming things down people's throat because you're going to get a poor review, or they're just going to ignore it altogether. And as I said a minute ago, don't get sidetracked by the technology. You can take this really a step at a time. And if you're not really sure where to start, my advice is you should have a list of what I call comparable authors, visit their websites, sign up for their mailing list, and see what they talk to their fans about and how often they talk to their fans. Try to get a feel for what they're doing, because those are the same kinds of fans that you want to be a member of your mailing list. And finally, as Brian Clark says here, this makes the point beautifully. You got almost 200,000 Twitter followers, all these people on Facebook, and he's got a newsletter that gets 2,000 clicks from a list of about 7,500 people. So email is definitely your greatest asset. So start now and keep growing it. Now, source two are the businesses. And this is often what we think about with reviews, is that these are people that we can pay either a small fee or no fee to help us launch the book with reviews. And some of these reviews can be used on the back cover of the book, or they can be used in other marketing material. People like Kirkus have a terrific name, and there's great options available there. There's several of them that are available, and they run from what I've seen $49 up to $425 or more if you want a faster review. Examples here, as I say, are Kirkus and Huge Orange, and some of these are for customer or reader reviews, and other ones are for those editorial reviews that you post via Author Central. Now, the hybrid are they're kind of a combination of the fee only as well as that traditional no fee. It's obviously a lot harder to get these, but these companies will say, okay, well, send me the book and we'll decide whether we will review it. And if we don't review it, you can always pay us to review it, which sounds a little bit of a bait and switch type of thing. But there's some very notable people in this, including Forward Reviews, which has a magazine, and it's very sophisticated, very much like a Kirkus. They have a system called, or a service called Clarion Reviews that you can pay them to write the review. So in their case, as I said, it's a hybrid. City Book Review is another one. You've perhaps seen some of theirs. They post their reviews on San Francisco Book Review or Manhattan Book Review, different city names associated with book reviews. The third would be services, and Goodreads, Happy Book Reviews are examples there, where you're paying someone for an opportunity to provide your book to potential reviewers. Now, you're not in direct contact with the reviewer. You're not controlling that reviewer. So to me, this is really the best of all worlds, where you're actually investing in this without that sort of without that sort of risk of being accused of buying those reviews or paying that person directly for a particular review. You also don't get to control it as much, which is actually the point. But it is a terrific service. I would see more people in this particular area in the years ahead. And then traditional would be the no fee, and these have been around for the longest time. And you might, recall newspapers used to do book reviews. It's a similar kind of a thing. They choose what's going to be reviewed. But really, in this case, traditionally published books are your competition. That's going to be tough to get your book reviewed there. They have different requirements. For example, Shelf Awareness will say that they review self-published books, but you cannot send them a print-on-demand book, which is the majority probably of self-published books. So that would have to be a traditionally or offset published book in order for them to review it. Now, the third source are book bloggers, and this is a terrific resource with literally thousands of book bloggers out there. The benefits of this is that it is free. I'm not aware of any book blogger that will charge you a fee to review a book. These are the folks who might charge a fee or request a payment in order to speed up the consideration to review your book or to review your book. But they don't charge for it. There's also a lot of them. And one of the things that I think is kind of cool is that they're going to be posting it in multiple locations. For example, Amazon, Goodreads, Library Thing, those types of places. And the other really big benefit is that you get kind of a review plus promotion. So it's going to be on their blog, as well as perhaps promoted to their social media connections. And that's something that you don't get with some of the other reviews that you can get where people post those directly on Amazon, and that's it. So I call that the twofer. Now, the downside of this is really it's time consuming. You need to find the right blogger for your book because there's so many of them, but they all have different reading tastes. So in that case, you might have a potentially low yield. You might contact 20, 30, 40, 50 of them and get one or two reviews. And then it's quite competitive. So the best ones, those with a large social media following, with a great reputation, are going to be tougher to pitch your book to. The fourth source is our blog tour organizers. Now, a blog tour organizer is essentially a publicist, or could be one person or a team of people who do book marketing for authors. I consider these to be terrific time savers. They often provide additional services. So for a self-published author, these are great resources, for advice, especially if you're a new author, and providing, say, virtual assistant services, or maybe finding people where you can do a cover reveal or a spotlight for a book and those kinds of things. Now, the downside is that they are going to be approaching bloggers who have agreed to post reviews about books presented to them by blog tour organizers. So it's a little less personal and maybe less effective, since there's this more transactional relationship between the blog tour organizer and the blogger themselves. There is a fee, although it is very small. Some of them will actually don't charge any fee whatsoever. Others may charge $25, $50, but it's usually going to be, $100, maybe a little bit more. And they're going to contact, say, 10 or 20 or 50, depending on what you pay, bloggers on your behalf. So it's a huge time saver, as I pointed out. And then the other thing to keep in mind is not all bloggers participate with tours. Some of them you will have to go to directly, but that's where the blog tour organizer and the blog tour and a blogger really kind of combining those two really come into play. Is you want to find bloggers who do not participate in tours that you would contact directly, and that let the blog tour organizer contact the other ones for you. And so just kind of putting that together here in one slide as a quick start. So contacting the bloggers, two things to keep in mind. Number one is reviewing books as their hobby. And so you should always approach this that they're doing you a favor, not them doing you doing them a favor. And they're busy. They've got a life just like we do. They're also personal, and so you want to be personal back to them. You never want to mass email them. It isn't a matter of you trying to save time in this case. And they can tell. They'll say, some of them will say, look, if I don't get back to you in a week, that means I'm not interested. Others will say, please contact me if you don't hear from me. But whatever it is, you want to really begin by getting organized, have a spreadsheet or a Word document or a notebook where you're tracking down who you're contacting, when you contacted them, what the response was, and what things that you need to do. And so that you don't recontact them in the future, and you don't forget to not contact them when they ask you to contact them. Then the second thing is you want to find the bloggers who review books like yours. So if you write romance books, you're not going to be contacting a blogger that is interested in memoirs. And so it just goes to, it's just one of the most important things is that you find the bloggers who like your books. And the easiest way to do that, first of all, is they say that on their page. This is what I'm interested in reading. And number two, just look at what they've reviewed in the past. And if your book fits into that reading taste, then they're a great fit for you. And you want to find 3 to 5 of them, and then you want to write those down and go to each site individually and verify their interest and their availability. Some will say, I'm not reviewing right now, or not until after the holidays, or like I say, the interest of that your specific kind of book, and you'll contact them according to how they want to be contacted. Many of them will say, just send me some basic information or send me some links, and they'll decide. Others will say, send me a copy of the book. So then you'll record that in your notes under number 1 where you got organized, and then you'll repeat that process. And so there's some good sources. You can go to Google, and if you get some good search strings, you might say, especially for nonfiction books, book bloggers that review books about, tree care, and use Google in that kind of a way. I'm actually the publisher of book reviewer Yellow Pages, which we'll talk about in a moment, but we have 3 sections in that book where there's 200 book bloggers, there's blog tour organizers, and there's all the book review businesses that are listed in there, along with a lot of the advice that I'm talking to you about here today. Another good resource is Book Blogger List and Book Reviewer Directory. They don't have quite the detail that we have in our directory, but they have a lot more bloggers that are listed there. So those are 4 resources for you to find those bloggers that are right for your book. Now, in terms of FAQs, the most frequently asked question we hear is, how do I know whether that reviewer is worth my time? So if it's a Kirkus, that's a pretty easy decision. You know that it's a big name, and if you're going after the market that pays attention to Kirkus reviews, or you have that budget, then to me that's a no-brainer. They've got a great reputation. But if you're going after the average blogger, then you're thinking to yourself, well, geez, there's going to be some that are going to be more popular than others. So number one is you want to look at how closely the book subject matter matches their interest. So just continue to stress this particular issue. Number two is the popularity of their blog / website. You can go to Alexa, see what kind of rankings that are there. There's other ways, other tools that are available to look at the domain authority of that website. I wouldn't get too caught up in this. I think number one is probably a little more important, but there's in the Book Reviewer Yellow Pages directory, we actually have a few more ways that you can evaluate someone's blog or website. You can get kind of a feel for things too, about how active it is and how frequently they post to the website. And then number three, how large is their social network? Some of these buttons are going to be on the website, and you'll see how many followers they have, how many people like particular blog posts. So those are all good indicators there. And then where else do they post the reviews? This is something that we disclose in our directory. But if they're posting it in just one place, that's great. But if they're posting it in multiple locations, you never know where your reader's going to come from. So people that will post on several different platforms, as I said before, Goodreads, or maybe on their Facebook pages or in Library Thing, those are all great places that you want your book mentioned. And so reviewers that do that are going to be more worth your time than not. FAQ 2 is, I've often read about people who say, well, I contacted 100 bloggers and no one's accepting my book for review. And so these are the 5 reasons why I believe that may be happening, is that, we don't really know, are they only approaching bloggers that are a fit for that particular book? Or maybe the timing is a little bit off. Maybe they did all the contacting in December and then didn't really tell us that everybody's really busy in December, right? So it could be just that it's a busy time of year for book releases, say it's early summer and the fall are particularly busy time periods. The competition is actually quite fierce. So there's literally thousands of books published every week. And those most desirable reviewers are going to be the hardest ones to convince. And you got to just keep that in mind. And that's why you can't get too caught up in saying, well, I only want to be reviewed by the most popular blogs. Obviously, we want an ROI on our time, but you don't always have that. And some of the bloggers are kind of up and comers. So you may want to start with some of the ones that are maybe a little more available, but still have really nice looking websites. And then how did you approach them? Did you expect them to do this for you? Or did you approach it respectfully the way that you would want to be approached? And then finally, as I said at the very beginning, how professional is your book? And is it well edited? And when you made the query, was it thoughtfully written and also in good English? And so people kind of use that as a proxy for for deciding whether or not they're going to review your book. So you want to be really buttoned up about that. FAQ 3 is really on negative reviews, and this is something that's I think just about everyone would say the same thing. A lot of authors, is that the default rule is just ignore it. There's just going to be people out there that have to make their point or don't pay attention. And the one I show up here is Moby Dick. You have a classic, and nearly 25% of the reviews are 3 stars and lower. So you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. And also, balanced ratings are more natural anyway. when you read a review, are people mentioning the same thing repeatedly? So perhaps there's an opportunity to learn from that review and to incorporate those comments or suggestions into a second edition or your next book, that type of thing. You don't want to apologize. I think when you do apologize, you're essentially admitting that there's a problem. And so in that case, why did you publish the book in the first place? You can preempt some of these things by pointing out the issue yourself. Uh, I think that you can say, in one case I actually published a directory a few years ago that was dealing with golf courses in the United States versus, and it used to be for Canada, the United States, and I renamed the book the U.S. Golf Course Directory. And as a matter of fact, I got a negative review. I think it was a one-star review because the person said it didn't contain Canadian golf courses, which of course the title of the book said it did. Now anyone reading that would would say would think more poorly of that reviewer than they would of the author in that case. So this is kind of an example of pointing out the issue yourself, or at least writing about it perhaps in the description of the book. It doesn't contain this, or it doesn't contain that, or it has, this is for the kind of a problem that this book solves. So just kind of being upfront about who your book is for will preempt some of those issues. And then finally, arguing with the reviewer is just really not a good thing. It's petty, it turns off readers, and frankly, no one's going to be reviewing your book if you're going to be arguing with each person. So the best policy, again, is just to ignore them on this. And recapping what we've just talked about, you should be asking yourself, how many people are waiting for my book to be released? Now, if you've got 5 or 10 people that are waiting for it, obviously you want to have more people waiting for it, and that's going to result in more reviews. And so you may want to hold the book for a period of time while you build up a mailing list, or you certainly want to temper your expectations if no one's really expecting that book to be released, because Amazon is not in the business of marketing your book. They're really a store that displays or distributes the book or handles the distribution of your book. And then how widely am I distributing my book? If you're distributing your book very narrowly, for example, Amazon would be the primary one for a lot of people these days, then there's going to be a lot of reviewers who are not going to be interested in reviewing a book that's so available only from Amazon. And these are especially some of the more traditional or larger name reviewers. They want to review books that are widely distributed, and that means in bookstores. And so is that a knock against self-published books? Not necessarily, because their readership is going to be people who are expecting to buy this book anywhere. So if you're distributing only on Amazon, so that's going to kind of tell you something about how you should approach the reviewers. What is your budget? If you have that small budget or a larger budget, and where you can spend that, again, depending on the type of book that you have, and those, it will dictate the kinds of reviews that you really want to go after. How much time do you have? If you have more time than money, then obviously book bloggers or blog tour organizers are great opportunities for you. If you don't have as much time, then there's a number of paid services that can help jumpstart that for you. And then thinking about whether or not reader reviews are important or trade reviews are important. Some people will do a mixture of these because they like a trade review quote for the book or the promotional materials, and then the reader reviews to help their presentation on Amazon, let's say, when someone shows up to buy the book. So these are just some of the questions that I'll ask a author when they're getting ready to publish their book, so that we can kind of get on the same page and choose a review strategy that's right for them. Now, the resource that I mentioned before, just talking about this for a moment, a lot of this really comes down to your time. And so what we publish in the directory is a way for you to save time in looking for book reviewers and how to approach them. So we've taken 200 book bloggers, been doing this now annually since 2009. On the right side, you see the contact information that we display for each of the bloggers. It's similar in the tour organizers. There's 40 of those, but we get into some of the costs associated with it. what services they provide. In the case of the book bloggers, you see there where are the reviews posted. That's number 9. And then what kinds of books do they review? You don't want to rely on this 100% because it's a snapshot in time. You always want to still visit their website to confirm the information that's here, because it does change. But it really does save that time and helps you zero in. It has an index with close to 1,600 entries, and they're all hyperlinked in the ebook. It's also available in paperback. And then there's the 32 business book review businesses that are in here. And these are all for the hybrid, the traditional, the services, and the paid book reviewers. And they're organized with a profile for each one of these and how to work with them. And then it has a lot of resources with Amazon terms of service, dealing with negative reviews, and then the quick start guides, etc. You can find it, on our shop page or on Amazon. And if you're not really still sure about it, you can go to bookrevieweryellowpages.com, and you can download 10 of our editor choice book blogger listings for free. Those are the ones that you see right there on the screen on the right. So I really appreciate the time, Jim, and being a part of this. If people have questions, they can certainly visit these websites and then contact me through the contact form there.
David, excellent presentation. As you mentioned, the review process is very difficult and is very important. And I think the resources that you have available for authors is very valuable. So I encourage everyone to go check those things out. Of course, like you mentioned in there's time and effort in here. I think that a lot of people want to just try and take the easy road when it comes to getting reviews. And as you mentioned, it's really a process. I see it more as a numbers game. So you have to be able to contact, if you want to get, like, maybe you can answer this question. If you wanted to get a good 10 solid reviews, I mean, in my opinion, you got to contact 100 people at least.
Yeah, it's the old sales thing, right? And you've got, the more you contact, the greater the chance you're going to hear yes. And so I think the idea that you're going to contact 4 or 5 people and get 4 or 5 reviews is really misplaced expectations.
Yeah, it really is. So, that's one of the things we do with the reviewer grabber is we allow you to find all of those people and contact them so that you can get a chance. And, at happybookreviews.com, we do the same thing. We reach out to a lot of reviewers, and, some of them don't get back to you. Some of them are interested and will review it, and some of them will just read the book and they won't review it. But there's no other way. In my opinion, no better, faster way to get quality reviews than doing that, or working with services like yours or information like you have. Because what I like about your service is it actually, you're kind of pre-qualifying these people who like to take reviews, right?
Right, exactly.
So how do you handle, because this will inevitably happen, how do you handle when a reviewer emails you back and is like, yeah, but we only charge for those reviews?
Well, as I say in the book, there should be no one in here. It's clearly identified if there's people that are charging, and that's in the book review business section. And if someone was to come across people, a blogger who said, I charge for review, and where they're accepting payment for terms, let's say, I'll give you a 5-star review or I'll guarantee a review, those types of things, and that's against the terms of service.
Right.
And those get removed from the directory. I've never, I think there's been one person that's happened with, but that's just we will not put somebody in the book that operates like that.
Okay, well, that's good to know, because I've heard from authors who have actually done that, and then of course they lose the the opportunity for the review. What's your take on and we'll wrap up here, but what's your take on responding to negative reviews?
I don't think it's a good idea. It's almost I just say don't. I've seen too many cases where people will try to correct a misperception about a review, and it ends up being a back and forth between them and the reviewer, and it's all there publicly, and it's there forever. And so you can't even, you can put happy faces on it, whatever you want to do. It's just not going to work. And so I think um, you're better not to respond to those things and just to move on and let somebody else hopefully respond to it. Um, that's always the best if you can find someone else that can step in that does a review, or if you know somebody, or the person is going to naturally do that, usually works in your favor.
Last question. I get this question all the time. People say, well, Jim, I want to launch the book, but I don't have any reviews. I only have a handful. And in my opinion, I always tell people, I say, don't spend a dime marketing your book or promoting it until you have at least 10 to 15 base reviews. Do you think that number should be right there or higher?
Actually, I love that strategy, and I follow the same strategy. I think two things on that. One is that, why is it in rare cases the book doesn't have to be published right at that particular moment in time? And so I do think that for a lot of books, they're rushed into the market for the wrong reasons, or just because the person has finished it and they want to get it up. And so, one, I would encourage people to get that marketing house in order so that when they do launch it, that they've got those reviews in place. And number two, I agree with you. I think that you can have kind of a soft launch, call it, and you get the book up there, because there's nothing worse than going out and telling people, come and review or come and buy my book, when there's no reviews, especially when it's the general public. So if you go back to that one slide I showed where you have these concentric expanding circles, really the last people that you should be promoting to are general Amazon shoppers, so to say, called the general public, a BookBub type of buy, or any other kind of promotions, until you actually have those reviews, because then you've got the social proof in place.
Yeah, and the social proof is still such the biggest thing, in my opinion. I mean, if you look at the new Amazon stores, the retail stores, and the way that they're set up, you can go to a thing on the end of the aisle, and it's going to say there's a sign up top that says the most reviewed and best reviewed books of 2017. And for me personally, this is how I shop on Amazon for books. When I go to find a new sci-fi book, I go and I look and I see which one has the most reviews. And the reason I do that is because I want people to do the work for me. I want the social proof of the people to justify that this was worth my time and investments. It's a good book. I'm not going to be burned. And that's how I shop. And I know Amazon knows that's how a lot of people shop, if not the majority of people shop. So that's why this whole thing about getting reviews is so important. And that's why you have to spend the time and effort to put that in. So David, thank you again for presenting all this information. I really appreciate it.
Well, I think it's great to happen to be here with you on this, Jim, and I think it's such an important subject, especially for new authors, to get off on the right foot. And just great for the opportunity. Thank you very much for having me.
Everybody check out bookrevieweryellowpages.com, and of course David's site at authorimprints.com. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching another Author Marketing Club Masterclass. I hope you found it helpful. I know I did. And please continue to your membership at Author Marketing Club. We'll bring you more content as we can. And happy book selling. We'll talk to you next time. I'm Jim Kukrow, signing out.